So welcome to this. I think it's our second North Norfolk gathering. I think we had the last one 2 or 3 months ago, which I think was quite positive. Hence, we're here again today. It's really an opportunity for you to introduce yourselves and perhaps pick up any topics or issues that you'd like to discuss, or indeed, share information and make connections that you can follow up afterwards, perhaps. I think was one of the positive things that's come out of these area gatherings so far. People have found interesting partners or potential partners and have gone off and sort of connected and developed their thinking and ideas. So it's good. I don't know. I think I've met you, Lucy. I can't see you. Obviously, you're not on visual at the moment, but we'll get to you in a moment. Basically, we'll introduce yourselves, say a bit about what you do, where you are, and any topics you'd like to talk about today. So I'll just go around in the order that you're on my screen. Nige, over to you first.
Yeah, hello, I'm Nige Stannett. I'm the Climate Change Project Officer for North Norfolk District Council, helping to do all sorts of things involving climate change, so looking at the council's carbon footprint, and all the way into environmental schemes. I led on the council's 110,000 trees project, so work with lots of communities there. So yeah, that's kind of it. I have quite a broad remit, and yeah, and links to the group in sort of lots of different ways, with climate anxiety and things being rearing its ugly head, I guess, as well.
Anything particularly you'd like to pick up today?
Not really, I guess. No, it's just because the tree project is closed now, and so we're sort of looking at other things, and with the local elections and things happening, we're sort of in a period of flux as to what the new administration, the direction and things they'd like to go in and what they'd like us to do. So we're sort of waiting really to find out those sorts of things as well. So yeah, just always just trying to find out what's happening across our district and how we can support them. Really.
It's still a Lib Dem administration, is it?
Yes.
Right, okay. I met Councillor Saul Penfold the other day wearing another hat, and he was very complimentary about the work you've done on the trees. So
very good.
A little plus for you. I'm sure he said that to your face as well anyway.
Yeah, and that's on video as well. So yeah, that's always good.
Jolly good. Helen, you're next.
So we've just had our job titles changed, and for the life of me, I can't remember what it is. So I'm now technically an early help community worker, which used to be a community focus officer, which was far easier to remember. I work for Children's Services in what used to be early help hub, but now we are a family hub, or will be moving forward. So we work in connection with schools and youth groups and parent-toddler groups, community bases. So we are kind of working in lots of arenas, anywhere from 0 to 19. Lots of people ask us questions, and in terms of like green spaces, like, well, do you think we could do this, and where would be the best place to ask for this support? So in our connection really with the Green Care Network is either to come and ask for advice on behalf of the groups that we work with, or share the information for the things that you guys are doing, and saying to our partners and groups that these things are available, these things are going on. So like for your activities and things that are planning for the summer, these things are available to families that we think that you'd be really interested and will enjoy. So go along and experience. So we're kind of, so my role is I'm one of hopefully soon to be 4. We've got new staff being recruited at the moment. It's to share information one way or another for the benefit of our families and communities, really.
Fine. And then again, nothing particular you want to pick up on today?
Not really, unless there's any funding available for groups to access if they're wanting to work on projects in the green spaces, or where do they go for advice for, say for instance, if they wanted to start something like a little garden or raised beds. In terms of lots of our groups often say they want to do things to encourage children and families to access, like building like mini allotments, say for instance at parent toddler groups or within their community groups, because not all families have access to do that at home. So lots of groups are saying that, oh, it'd be really nice if we could have one here, but they don't always know what to do or how to make that happen, what to plant, or have the expertise or funding to do that. And sometimes they need somebody who can say, oh, this would be the best thing to do. It's accessible. It's maybe having it raised means it's accessible for disabilities. Having it look like this means that it's wide or whatever. So it means it's a bit more accessible. Sometimes it's knowing what to have, because if your expertise are in the early years arena, in milestone development, you're not necessarily going to be able to have expertise in both arenas. So knowing who to turn to say, actually, or did you think about this, or go to this website, would sometimes be really helpful to be able to say, so if somebody could point me at that direction, that would be really useful.
Yeah, I mean, I've got a few suggestions which we'll come back to on that in a moment. That's very helpful. Thank you. Lucy, over to you.
Hello, I apologise I'm not on screen today. I'm actually having to dial in on my mobile while I'm on the move. So yeah, that's why I'm not on the camera.
No problem,
today.
no problem.
But I am the Service Development Officer for Early Help and Prevention at North Norfolk District Council. And I am sat within the People Services Directorate. And my job is a bit like Nigel, very, very broad, but it's to do with the development of the services within the People Services, looking at new projects, existing projects, and sort of looking at how we can improve health and well-being within the district. And that includes all sorts of things. From we've got a project at the moment which is addressing the long waiting lists at the hospitals for hip and knee replacements, and offering a sort of holistic service on waiting, what's called waiting well. That's one thing we're delivering. We're currently looking at some work around age-friendly communities, and a part of that is how we use our green spaces and existing resources that we have to make it more make our communities more age friendly. Obviously, we've just had the news that we are now officially the oldest demographic in the UK, so it certainly seems like a prudent time to be working on that. And then my other hat is as part of the North Norfolk Health and Wellbeing Partnership, which is part of the integrated care system. I'm the older person's lead on that one as well, so again that will be looking at things like age-friendly communities and that kind of thing. And I guess today I'm really fact-finding, I guess, really, in the minute, and a little bit of networking. There's not really any particular topic I want to raise or anything like that, but it's useful to be here to hear what's going on and, you know, what other opportunities for collaborative working there is, because obviously that's something that we're really keen to do.
Yeah, fine. Well, lovely to see you, or not see you, but lovely to have you here, and welcome. Yeah, I mean, a few things again I can come back on which might be of interest to you, that I'm involved with, you know, on behalf of the network. Perhaps I can come back to Helen's first of all, your request for help and funding advice and so on. What we can do, we've got a couple of channels that we can use. If you've got specific requests, we have a Facebook group. I don't know if you're on that or you know about it, but that's proved to be very useful in terms of publicising, particularly events, but also, you know, the sort of thing you've just talked about. You know, anyone out there can help this group with X, Y, or Z. And the other thing, which is relatively new, and I'm not quite sure it's fully operational at the moment, is a Padlet. Have you come across Padlet before? Yeah, it's essentially a sort of an online notice board, I suppose, is the easiest way of describing it.
Yeah.
It's replacing our what we did have was a Google Sheets members exchange, it was called, and the idea was that members could go on there and log either things that they wanted to find out or needed help with, or could offer help and advice, etc. And it proved sort of, I suppose, marginally helpful. I think partly because it wasn't a very attractive thing to go to and fill in, but also because those of you who are familiar with Voluntary Norfolk, here's Martin Langston arriving, so I'll just let him in. They have a Padlet, but they send round regular emails advising people of what's new. So there's a bit of a prompt, if you like, which I think is a very good idea, and that's something we're going to try and adopt as well. So there's a volunteer we've got called Frances Evans who's working on the Padlet, and I can certainly share her email with you if you'd like to make contact with her on anything specific. She's doing a great job, and I say it's early days and we're still getting used to this technology and how we use it effectively. But that could be useful to you, Helen, and possibly Lucy and Nigel as well in due course as well. Anything you want to come back on that?
That sounds really interesting. I think the Padlets is certainly something that we use in other arenas. In terms, and it's really interesting. It's really an interesting way of being able to share articles as well. So if stuff comes up, sharing knowledge base and things. And as far as I'm aware, depending on the one that you've used, you can download stuff and print stuff. So in terms of sharing things with parent and toddler group, if it's like a how-to guide or a user thing, or then it would be something that we could, with permission, take off and go, oh, actually this is or if it was a seasonal guide of something, you could take it and go, oh, actually there's a thing that we could print off. And the same with I know that there's the Green Care Network have got the open day, or in the summer holidays
Festival, you mean?
Festival, thank you. So if there's a poster, we could print it off and take it out and share it. So the so the Padlet's quite a good way of being able to kind of download that information, take it to the places that we want to share that information. So it's a really easy format for us to use that.
Yeah, well, I'll say a little bit about the festival later on, because I think that is something that maybe, again, is of interest to you. Before we go further, though, can I welcome Martin? I see you're there, Martin. Glad you could join us. Did you want to say a little about yourself and anything you'd like to talk about today?
Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you see me, by the way?
Can't see you, no.
I don't know why that is. I'm trying to sort it. This is a new laptop.
Don't worry. We have someone else who's having problems being seen, so as long as you can hear us, that's the main thing. Yeah, would you just like to introduce yourself?
I'm a new town councillor for Sheringham Town Council, and I'm chair of the Climate and Community Committee. Right. And I'm primarily here to listen and to learn today, but if any ideas come up, I'll be keen to share them.
Fine. Okay. Well, good to see you. Do you know everyone else on the call at all, or anyone on the call?
No, I don't. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'll briefly introduce them, and you'll see some obvious useful connections straight away, I think. Nigel Stannett is the Climate Change Officer, Project Officer at Norfolk District Council, and I suggest would be a good contact for you, Martin. Helen works for Children's Services, as you can see, in early years work particularly, and Lucy is again North Norfolk District Council, working on health and well-being, community, elderly people, a whole range of other things like that. I hope I've done you all justice, probably not, but anyway. And I'm convener of the Green Care Network, as you may know, so my background is quite varied, but I'll say a little bit more about the network and some of the things that we do and might be useful. Hope that's all right.
Yes.
Just coming back to both Helen and Lucy, I mean, a couple of things that may be of interest, and some of which I think you're probably aware of. First Nature, that rings a bell with you, Helen, I'm sure. We have a campaign to expand nature connection opportunities for children and young people across Norfolk, which we kicked off. Well, we actually started work on it just under a year ago. And last, when was it, about 2 or 3 weeks ago, we actually launched the campaign at an Earth Day event in Nigel and mine's local church in Havringland, which was a brilliant day, I have to say, a really, really good day. We launched the event. We had contributions from young people about the benefits they get from connecting with nature in various ways, working at care farms or in woodland and so on. And also a young lady who talked about climate change anxiety, which was fascinating to hear as well. We're now in the stage of really gathering our thoughts on that. We've done quite a bit of preparation on the campaign, and we've got a vision and aim set out. And we have an event, a workshop, a week tomorrow, to review where we're at and really set out our objectives for the coming year, sort of actions we want to see happening. The sort of things we've been developing are obviously communications is vitally important. So we've started to develop a communication strategy in terms of the different audiences that we're trying to reach and what we're trying to get them to do. That may be obviously children themselves and their families. It may be organisations that are already providing nature connection opportunities for children and what they're doing and what they might do better or more of. But it's also about reaching businesses, reaching organisations that perhaps work with young people but don't necessarily do anything around nature connection, trying to encourage them perhaps to think about that. We've got the benefit of an award, which I'm very pleased to say the Bishop of Norwich is supporting, £1,000 award once for 3 years each year, which we've launched, and that's going to go to a project organisation that does and will continue to develop great work in expanding nature connection for children, particularly school-age children, which is the focus of that. And we're looking at other awards that we might develop as well. One of the fascinating things, and I think we have to sort of, in a sense, thank Zoom for this, is the ability to collaborate. And one of the really big benefits from holding meetings online is the ability from a wide range of people to come together from a lot of different places and to find out what each other do, but also to think about ways in which they might do things better in more joined up way. And that's particularly the case with contacting schools. As you'll all be aware, I'm sure schools are under an awful lot of pressure in terms of finances, staffing, and a whole range of things. And one of the things that might go by the wayside is that whole area of connecting with nature, which we don't want to see lost. So Isabel Mudge, who's I think the Senior Education Officer at the Wildlife Trust locally, has been coordinating some discussions between a whole range of organisations in order to have a joined up approach to school. So there's, if you like, one approach rather than several, making it easier to connect and develop ideas. And the focus, I think, has particularly been around how to use school sites in order to promote an understanding of nature and a connection with nature, and if you like, doorstep nature rather than having to go long distances. Having said that, one of the issues that we're starting to discuss is the issue of funding and organising school visits to nature sites, whether that's a conservation area or a SSI or whatever it might be. And as I've said, funding is obviously an issue. And a local farmer, Jeremy Buxton, is very keen, I think, to do something to raise funding that we might be able to use to plug the financial gap for schools if they've got a real problem. Just to give you for instance, my local, or Nigel and I's local primary school, Corston, recently had a visit to Corston Heath Nature Reserve, which was literally, I think, no more than 2 miles away from the school. They had to hire a coach and it cost them £300 just to go 2 miles up the road. And obviously there's all the health and safety, risk assessments, staffing issues that come with, organising something like that. Having said that, it was obviously a brilliant visit, and the children, I think those who went along from the staff as well, got an awful lot from it as well. So that's one of the issues. What else are we doing? Yeah, we've been talking about various ideas. One project that's operating nationally is called Backyard Nature, and that's an ability to fund groups of probably teenagers to develop and take forward projects in their own neighbourhoods that are of environmental value. That might be about improving biodiversity, it might be about flood management, or a whole range of different possibilities. And there's quite a lot of interest, I think, in perhaps doing something with a Norfolk perspective or a Norfolk badge on that. So that's another possibility that's in the wings sort of thing. So yeah, First Nature, if you're interested, if you'd like to get more involved and be part of discussions, then let me know. That's very easy to do. As I say, watch this space. The campaign is starting to motor on a bit, and we'll start to see hopefully more things starting to happen now we've got our ideas sorted out. Anyone want to come back on anything I've said there before I sort of say something about social prescribing? Perhaps is the other topic that might be of interest.
I'd just say for Helen, we have got the Sustainable Communities Fund, which communities can access, so, and apply for things. And I was just looking to see if schools would be eligible as well. They can be, but it needs to be additional. It needs to be outside of the school's normal core curriculum.
So like if they were, I don't know, like putting in a pond, because that's outside of curriculum, because it would be then for like extracurricular activities. I'm trying to think.
Yeah, I'd always argue that it should be part of the curriculum, but
well, I do too, but
but yes,
Part of the
yeah,
wider
so
curriculum, not the formal curriculum, the academic curriculum. Yeah,
outside, because a lot of schools are trying to have like a polytunnel kind of like extra, where they then I know lots of schools are trying to do that thing where they're encouraging children to grow a thing and then it become part of the school where lessons, where you then bring it in and you make it your food into a something, so it then becomes part of the lesson, doesn't it? Because you've grown it, and it's, I don't know, part of I want to say food tech, but that feels more like high school, but it's part of your education process where you've grown a seed, watch it grow, and then I see what you mean. So it then has to be something that is outside of what is academic for it to be part of sustainable communities. What if, just playing the advocate, what if you have an outside group who meet at the school who would benefit from the, say, a garden or something, like, I don't know, a guide group or a brownie group, could they make the application on your behalf?
possibly,
because that's within your community. Okay, Nigel, I could always email you and we could have this conversation at another time.
Test it out, I would suggest. You know, if you've got specific ideas, Helen, perhaps Nigel, you know, dig a bit deeper for you and see whether it might be possible.
And that goes for Martin as well. That fund is there to be used, and we want to encourage it because it often gets used for play equipment or updating village halls and things, which is great, but we'd rather it be used to help the environment more, or to combat climate change and that. So there is that fund there. I can put details in the chat bar if
could you drop your email into the chat, and then I could always just message you separately.
Before you carry on, one thing I was going to say, and I think I've said this at other area gatherings, is that if everyone is in agreement today, when I do a follow-up email, I'll reveal your email addresses, so you can
that would be great. Yes, please.
Is that all right with everybody?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, good. Okay with you, Lucy? Lucy, you're on mute.
Yeah.
Thumbs up. Good. Right, we're communicating. Excellent. Couple of other things.
Sorry, could I just ask?
Yes, carry on,
Nigel. So this is the Sustainable Community Fund, Nigel. Yeah.
Yes, that's right.
Sorry. What does that derive from again?
So do you want me to send you the details separately after this?
Yeah, that would be fine. Yeah.
And then I'll send you the prospectus and all of that, so you can have a look and see how
it's used.
But the money's there to be spent. So and also on any land, again, sort of, Helen, if there's communities that want land to do things, although there's been a bit of change in the team that looks after our green spaces, sort of using that space to improve biodiversity, but also for community well-being. So if I was trying to get a community garden established in Fakenham, that didn't quite work out, but I think there is scope there and willingness to do things on our own green spaces that we have that is publicly accessible. So there might be.
We're in the process of having conversation about something going on in Fakenham, so we may be able to potentially have that conversation again once we've made some headway, but I'll come back to you once I find out if we can get the go ahead for what we want to do. There might be some opportunity to do some of what you want to do.
Yeah, perfect.
Okay,
thank you.
A couple of other points which might be useful, Ellen. Are you aware of the Papillon project?
Yes, the Pantheon, because they support, they're very good at supporting with advice and guidance. And do they only work with schools is the only thing I wasn't
They
sure
only
about.
work with high schools.
High schools, yes.
I think Matt Willer, who's the leading light and inspiration of the whole thing, he's now, I think, working over 30 schools across Norfolk, which is brilliant.
I have heard amazing things about what they offer.
I'm not sure where he's working or where that's working within North Norfolk. I'm not sure whether there are many schools at the moment in North Norfolk that are signed up. I may be wrong. Anyway, so that might be a good lead for you.
I will keep track on that one as well, though. Thank you.
Thinking about the primary school end, though, something which, again, going back to the First Nature campaign, which I sort of kicked out as an idea for us to think about, is what's called a pocket garden competition. Now, this is a project that's been running in Scotland for many years, I think. And basically, it involves children designing a metre square plot. And typically, it's done in a pallet. You know, the sort of pallet you get goods delivered on. You can create that as a sort of an enclosed little garden space. And it's down to the children to use their imagination to come up with a design for that little pocket. And then there's a competition and an awarding of prizes and so on and so forth. I think it's a brilliant idea, and it seems to have worked really well in Scotland. I think in Scotland, I think they have an event a bit like the Norfolk show, I think, where the schools transport these gardens to one place, if you can imagine that. So they're all on display, a bit like, you know, Chelsea Flower Show, I suppose, that sort of thing on a minor scale. But maybe that's something we can develop a bit further, and if there's interest and we can get some funding and so on.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah. I wanted to say just something a little bit about the health connection, particularly with you in mind, Lucy, but it may be of interest to others. I've been now in discussions with the local ICS, the Integrated Care System and Board, about their green plans. And whilst those are mainly focused on ways of reducing carbon emissions, I'm very pleased to say that there is a commitment in the ICS green plan to looking at NHS sites from the point of view of improving biodiversity, possibly, using them to promote health and well-being, and that might be not just for service users on those sites, but perhaps their families and carers, staff on the site, and maybe the wider community. So garden projects, if you like, on hospital sites is a good case in point. There are some of those around already. And we're really at the early stages of thinking about how do we move that forward. It's about gathering information on what's already happening and then promoting ideas and giving support to it might be hospitals, it might be GP premises, it might be ambulance stations, other NHS facilities, looking at their green space and thinking about it constructively and creatively, if you like, rather than, which is very often the case, you know, mowing it every week during the summer and that's it, sort of thing. So that's something that's in train. And linked with that is the whole area of green social prescribing. Are you all aware of social prescribing and what it is? I imagine probably most of you are. Basically, it's non-clinical interventions, usually coming through GPs, but increasingly, I think, through other routes, for people that perhaps are in need of assistance and help and support, but don't necessarily need, you know, a pill for every ill, which is the phrase that's obviously often rolled out. There's a whole range of things that are available to do that. It could be, you know, joining a book club, joining a choir, going to a men's shed, going to a community garden, whole host of different things. And green social prescribing, as you could probably guess, is very much about those environmental activities that are going on that are seen to be of help to people, and that could be help with mental health, but it can also be help with physical health as well. Claire Dyke, who some of you may know, is the local lead on social prescribing, and she's been in post a few months now and is really energizing the whole thing in a really positive way. And I think this year is going to be a really great opportunity to see green social prescribing develop, and I'll give you a specific example in a moment. The reason I say that is because there have been 7 what they're called test and learn sites going on at national level for green social prescribing, and they finished in March. I think they went for 2 years, and an evaluation report is in the course of being pulled together for those test and learn sites. So there will be advice and information. I also think a toolkit is coming out in order to promote green social prescribing more widely. So let's keep our eyes open on that, and we can look at ways in which we can develop the opportunities to take that whole area forward. If you know the Green Care Network website, you'll probably know that there's a whole host of projects on there already, that some of which are directly involved in social prescribing. Like they take, if you like, clients or volunteers through GP referrals, through hospital referrals, whatever it might be. So that's a really positive development, I think. And what I said about NHS sites links in with that, because it could be that we could develop a community gardening project on a hospital site that would not only benefit people on that site, but also people in the wider community perhaps as well. So that's another big area of development. One specific thing, which is quite an exciting development, which I do know that Claire is very keen to put money into, is the development of something called nature prescriptions. You may have heard of this. This is a project that the RSPB have developed. I think they piloted it in the Shetland Isles, would you believe, and then in Derbyshire. And it's basically, I suppose, a calendar of activities. So every month there are suggested things that people can do to observe, experience, and connect with nature in order to benefit their health and well-being. And it has been used, I think, very successfully, particularly in Derbyshire and indeed in Scotland, where it's part of the social prescribing process. So a social prescribing link worker, for example, would sit down with someone and then, having talked through options of activities, suggest perhaps the nature prescription, which is basically, giving them a steer, if you like, to the sort of things they can do themselves in order to connect with nature at different times of the year in their area. We've had some initial discussions about that locally, and we're talking about possible slight variations, because Norfolk's obviously a big place, but having perhaps things to do connecting with nature that are relevant in different parts of the county. So something that talks about the Brecks, for example, because it has a very distinctive landscape, something about the North Norfolk coast because that has a very distinctive landscape, and so on. And also possibly going back to first nature, something which is angled at children potentially. So a nature prescription that children could use, because again, you may be aware, children's mental health is a big issue in school and out of school. So that's something that is on the way, really. Sorry, I've been rambling on far too long. Anything you want to come back on what I've said so far?
No. I was just going to say, do you know Ellen Goodwin, Nigel? Now at Chroma, she's a sustainability manager at the NHS Foundation, Norfolk and Norwich University Hospitals. NHS Foundation.
Yes, yeah. She
hasn't been in post that long, but
I think it's the woman I'm thinking of. Someone from the NNN certainly contributed to a workshop we put on last year, where she talked about what they've been doing on the Norfolk and Norwich site about tree planting and providing a walk, I think, on the site and things like that. Is that the sort of thing?
I think she's based at Chroma.
Oh, okay. Maybe it's
changed. She was part of the LEP, but she
right
left fairly recently.
It isn't a name that comes to mind, but yeah, okay, that could be a useful connection. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, I hope I haven't drummed you all into silence.
No, I think the green social prescribing is really interesting. Obviously, NNDC have some ambitions around net zero and those sort of things, and obviously we're very keen to promote any sort of activity that is green in that way. We do have a small team of social prescribers within the people services at North Norfolk District Council, so there's definitely maybe some opportunities for some collaborative work there, also with our community connectors team, which connect people to groups in the communities in the district. So yeah, there's definitely some scope for some for some collaborative work on some green social prescribing there. I think that sounds really interesting.
Good, good. Anything?
Yeah, I think I was going to say that I thought that certainly the green social prescribing part of it sounds really interesting. And certainly some of the things you've said, Nigel, about the connections with schools. I mean, partly I've heard that one partly because I'm a governor at my local high school and very interested in that development there, although of course that's semi-separate to the town council work. We're looking in a general way about making sure everything that we're doing as a town council, as an employer, and all the initiatives we do are oriented towards net zero, of course, in the way that Lucy has just said. But those additional things that we're talking about to do with biodiversity, green plans, that more general thing of having a positive way of connecting with nature in the way that you've said is very interesting, as well as the general thing of trying to reduce carbon use. I guess.
I mean, one of the things I'd probably ad nauseum now talk about is shades of green. And, you know, we talk about different environmental actions, some of which we talked about today. It might be about improving biodiversity. It might be about growing your own food and improving food security. It might be about mitigating climate change through tree planting, and so on. And all of those, depending on what you're doing, can benefit each other in some way, and including in that your own health and well-being, of course, because if you're out involved in a group that's perhaps doing some conservation work or involved in a community garden, the fact that you've got those social connections is vitally important for a lot of people who are, you know, increasingly isolated and so on. And we all live, you know, here's a case in point, more and more of our time online, don't we, rather than in sort of face-to-face contact. So yeah, hang on, you got your hand up.
Yeah, I just I'm interested in the prescribing, only because so we are in the really early stages, and I can't really talk too much about a project that we're going to be looking at next year, only because it's going to take so long to put together and fund, for our teenagers in North Norfolk in terms of mental and physical well-being. That would be in let's say blue space rather than green space, because we're looking at it out in connection with the sea. So it's about being out and doing something physical to help with your physical and mental well-being. But you said that there potentially could be funding that comes with the prescript. How does that work with the?
Well, no, funding is a key issue, and, you know, not surprisingly, many of the activities to which people are referred are voluntary or charitable organisations that may have been operating for some time and perhaps only recently have started to, you know, take people through the social prescribing route anyway. And their funding, you know, comes, as it does generally, through, you know, donations, grants, whatever, project funding. And there is a recognition, I think, at national as well as local level that sustainable activity, you know, anything beyond the latest project is vitally important for some of these organisations and projects. I don't think there's an easy answer to it, but it may well be that the ICS locally is able to sort of devote some funding to enable not only existing things to carry on, but maybe expand and develop new things where there are gaps, geographical gaps, or gaps in the types of activity that's available. That's something, you know, certainly we need to explore, I think.
Because I think you're right, especially if, you know, we're obviously thinking about our young people, but, you know, mental health and options for how to address mental health is definitely something that is something that we are looking at for our young people, because North Norfolk is somewhere that is really struggling for services. There isn't as many options, whether that be because our transport is not as good or the services just don't reach as far as North Norfolk. So if there's options that are available within our communities, and that, like that are available in green spaces, which naturally make them more sustainable, because that will be there when services end. The green spaces will continue, and you teach yourself a technique that will go into your adulthood about whether that's accessing services that are like, say for instance, if it's something you can access a National Trust property, or if you can access a walk on the beach. If there's mental health that comes with that, that's something you're teaching yourself to take into your adulthood, and those things won't go away. So these are things that we're looking at in terms of what can we support our young people with. The other thing is, I'm going to have to go in like 2 minutes, but I did want to just very quickly ask, it's not necessarily in connection to something I'm working at the moment, but something that has briefly crossed my desk, but I haven't got time really to look at in a minute, is there any thought process for either First Nature or the Green Care Network in terms of apprenticeships or supporting apprenticeships in working in sustainable communities and sustainable biodiversity environments? Only because I have been approached by a few younger people. I want to say they're actually technically adults now, 18, 19, 20s, who are looking to go on to study in these environments. But actually, I was really surprised at how difficult it actually is to take on academic studies in these arenas, and I hadn't comprehended how difficult that was. And I wondered if that was something that maybe the Green Care Network would consider, is bear in mind how wide the network's expertise is, whether that there would be an opportunity maybe to take on sharing that expertise with the next generation.
Yeah, I mean, one specific thing which I think does touch on that is something else that we helped set up is now called the Norfolk Community Nature Forum. That's all about a community-led approach to primarily biodiversity improvement. We have a bid into the National Lottery Climate Action Fund at the moment for funding, which, if successful, would give £150,000 over, I think, 18 months or something, which we would use to develop the work that we've started. Now, part of that is about precisely what you said. It's about actually developing opportunities for the development of green skills, use that term. We've had some initial contacts with an organisation called Society for the Environment, which is a sort of umbrella accreditation body who might be very helpful in developing connections with employers and educational institutions and so on. I know that, I mean, you may know this, that adult education, I think, are already doing some classes around this area. And again, we've had some initial discussions with them about, whether that can be expanded as a way of developing basic, but also perhaps more advanced green skills. In the way
the person who approached me was, they were looking for like something that would get them like from apprenticeship into employment. So it was that long-term view rather than they were, I think the option to upskill is fantastic, but it's that where we bring young people from college and put them in looking at careers that will bring them into jobs that will be biodiversity and looking at in the environment and things like that, because I understand
if the Climate Action Fund bid is successful, that's certainly something that will be on the agenda. We hope to hear a result on that, I think, in about the middle of June. So not long to go, and fingers crossed it will be successful, but we'll see.
That's great. I'm going to have to shoot. Thank you so much.
Thank you for your time. I will be circulating an email and a copy of the link to the recording as well. All right, be in touch.
I think just Nigel, quickly on the sort of various shades of green in my head, and how I approach it is, and why I'm sort of sit on lots of different green boards, is because everything outdoors and everything we do is impacted by climate change or impacts on climate change. So I always view that as that's the thread through everything we do. So throughout all the council services that we do, everything that happens, there's a climate change implication. So in terms of when you're putting in biodiversity, that's always beneficial
Absolutely.
for climate change. So there's no differentiation for me. That is the
Absolutely.
same
Yeah,
thing.
yeah, yeah.
And I
It's
think
just that often the funding streams are much more specific, aren't they? I think, you know, what I'm saying is, I think it's what you're saying is that, you know, in reality, all these things are linked and connected, and you benefit one thing, you benefit several
yeah.
things. So, yeah.
And just to highlight, and so just to highlight that all opportunities is to say, well, yes, we're doing this for biodiversity, but it also has the benefits for mental health and well-being and climate change. And it's always, those things are always interlinked, and not just, well, we're just doing this for well-being.
Yeah,
because of
no,
all those additional benefits.
Yeah, good. Martin, did you want to say anything about where Sheringham's at? We had Sarah and one of your colleagues, Madeline, I think on our previous call. Madeline, unfortunately, is not very well, so she couldn't join us today. And I don't know where Sarah's got to, but she was intending to join us, I think, today. Are you in a position to say anything more about where Sheringham Town Council's at and the sorts of things you want to develop?
Because I'm a new town councillor, I guess I'm a bit limited on that. Sarah let me know that she wasn't able to attend this evening and was pleased that I would be able to come. I think, I mean, in one sense, the way Nigel has described everything that happens as a climate change implication, we're trying to look at all town council assets, resources, and how they function in terms of sustainability, and we're trying to link it together.
Can I just ask Martin?
Positive vision for it, really.
Because you had a sorry, I should put my hand up. Because weren't you, Sheringham Town Council, looking for a consultant?
Yes.
Is that, have you got a consultant, or is that something you're still pursuing?
We haven't got a consultant yet.
Right. Okay.
So I certainly know that's the case, but I know that we haven't got a consultant, but that's certainly the way we want to go with it. Yes. And I was wondering if you could advise about that, Nigel.
Which Nigel?
if I'm Nige, so I have Nige and Nigel. That's kind of how I tend to work.
You're Nige, are you, Nige?
I'm not. Yeah, I've never been a Nigel. And when Nigel isn't on the call, because I'm not old enough yet. But,
I used to be Nidge. There we are.
I have friends that call me that. Yeah.
Yeah. Go on, Nige. You respond to that then.
Not really. There are people who may be able to help. And there's a chap in Norwich actually who might be able to. His thing is about working with communities, and we were hoping to get him involved in a project.
Nick, you're thinking of Nick.
Yes.
Yeah.
He spoke at Greenbuild one year, and it was really good. And sadly, we've not been able to make something work with him. But yeah, he might potentially be somebody.
So what's his name then?
What's the surname? Nick.
I've forgotten.
I am old enough.
I could certainly look it up and let you know, Martin.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks, Nidge. Yeah, I think that's certainly. Yeah. Certainly that idea of having a consultant who could take the thing forward and link it together in the way that Nige has described, so that all of the different assets we're looking at in terms of sustainability, but I'm also particularly keen on this connection to wider issues such as health and well-being, biodiversity, and so on. Yeah.
There is, I don't know if you've been on our website, but you can look at our climate change or net zero climate action plan, and that might give you some headings and pointers, and I'd be happy to have a chat with you another time.
Yes, I'd really like that.
because we.
So this is the NNDC. So what is it?
It's the Net Zero Strategy and Climate Action Plan, but it's just NZAP, but it's quite easy to find on the website.
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, I'd like, yeah, that would be really great to, I'll have a look at that, and it would be great to talk further about it. Yes.
Yeah, no, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else you wanted to pick up, Lucy, from what you've heard?
Not immediately springing to mind. No, there's some food for thought there, which I will certainly be taking away and having to think about and discussing with my manager. But yeah, no, it does all sound very interesting, and obviously I completely agree with Nige that there is that crossover between health and well-being and green policy and everything that we do has an impact on the climate and also on health and well-being. So there is crossover, and there's definitely room to work collaboratively, as they say.
Yeah, fine. I will say, if you're not a member of the network, it's easy to join us. It's free. You can register on our website. There's a join us page on the website with a very simple to complete form. And that way, you know, you're in the net in the sense, and will receive communications, etc. from us. And on those lines, we are having a new newsletter coming out in June. So if there's any news that you want to share, you know, of relevance to the membership, then let us know. I do need to mention one or two other things quickly. We've got, as you probably know now, a Norfolk Green Care Festival coming up, beginning on July the 22nd at an event at the Plantation Garden in Norwich, an open event 12 till 4, where we've got about a dozen, I think already a dozen organisations coming along with stalls and displays. We're a bit limited for space, if you know the Plantation Garden, but I think it will be a fabulous event.
Yeah.
And then we got the following 2 weeks where we're starting to assemble a programme of events and activities that members are putting on. So again, if you're thinking of doing anything in that 2 weeks that you know, we can publicise as part of the programme, really around that general theme of the health and welfare, well-being benefits from nature connection, but it could include other shades of green as well, as we've discussed. You know, let me know and we can start to pull that together. That's about it, I think. The only other thing perhaps briefly to say is when you do join us, or if you do join us, you'll go on a register, which we have periodically sort of circulated to people. At the moment, it's quite limited in the information it has on it, in terms of a name, perhaps, and a job role if there is one, and that's it. We're in the process of starting to expand the information available on that to include interests and also contact details where people are willing to share those, and a new register, you know, with that sort of wider information should be out hopefully by the end of this month, and that'll go around to all our members, so you can see who's a member on there, maybe see someone who you think, oh, they might be quite interesting to contact about X or Y, and if they've shared their contact details, then obviously you can do that. So hopefully that's going to be useful, as well as the Padlet I mentioned earlier on as well. If there's nothing else, what I was going to say was, I mean, we had this, this is the second meeting I think we've had. I think we had the previous one about, was it 3 months ago, Nige? Something like that, I think, wasn't it?
It feels a while, yeah.
Yeah. I'm just thinking, this is the first time we're having to sort of think about a third meeting. First of all, do you think it's worth carrying on perhaps at roughly 2 or 3 monthly intervals? I mean, we're a relatively small group. I have to say all the other gatherings have been relatively small, but there is a benefit to that, in that obviously it enables people to talk a bit more freely and extensively than perhaps if there's a lot of people on the call. And the fact that we record it and make it available on our YouTube channel means that a wider audience can access it as well. So I don't think we need to be too concerned about the numbers here, though it would have been nicer to have a, perhaps a slightly more diverse audience today. And, we could have talked about a range of other things as well, perhaps. What's your feeling? Should we go again in perhaps thinking about September now, really, probably mid-September rather than anything earlier than that, with summer of coming up on us and so on.
Yeah, that seems fine. That sounds good.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's definitely got value to meeting like this. I mean, Nige, when he's in the office, I'm sure sits at the other end of the building to me, but now I know who he is. I can go and find him and start working in the building. So yeah, no, definitely
Gosh.
handy.
There we are. The power of Zoom, even within a building. Look at that. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, classic council. We don't mix so well.
Good.
Just
Well,
Martin, I'll just say it's Nick Brooks.
All right.
all right. I was thinking of someone else.
Ah.
Okay.
Okay. If there's another name, I'll suggest that as well. Anyway, yeah. Well, we can exchange those after with the event. As I say,
Yeah.
I'll send around an email probably tomorrow with a link to the recording and share your emails. And I'll suggest a sort of a provisional date in September, which you can put in the diary. And then we'll advertise registration, etc., a bit nearer the time.
Perfect.
That sounds good.
Great.
Sounds good.
Good. I'll stop recording.